All right, guys. Well, we have a few updates here today talking about the recent happenings within the administration with Trump and JD Vance. JD Vance talking about housing. Maybe that's a big initiative for him in 2028 when it comes to young people. But you can see this is Scott Bessent talking to a reporter. They're still talking about this $2,000 check. This is like the big thing from the administration that they're going to try and push over the finish line, possibly in the summer. It's like perfect timing. They want the check to hit people's bank accounts before the real inflation happens. And so is it buying votes? Essentially, you got to do what you got to do. I really think when it comes to something like this, Trump has said, and behind closed doors, he knows the debt is a problem. We're going to have a debt spiral probably in 10 to 15 years. They're going to have to cut the entitlements. The retirement age is going to have to be raised. They're going to have to play around with payroll taxes. And that's really just in the early 2030s. They know if this continues, this deficit of $2.1 trillion, whatever it is now. I mean, they just upped the military budget to $1 trillion. That's an increase of about 150 billion. That was in his big, beautiful bill. It is an issue. And I think Trump deep down says, yes, we need to start trying to chip away at this deficit. It's important. But the problem is, I mean, even if you use all the tariff revenue, they've said it's about 350 billion, which is about an added 200 billion. Because remember, they were already at 150 billion even during Biden, because those were the initial Trump tariffs that were put in on China in 2018, and they were continued by the Biden administration. So they had like a baseline 150 billion dollar tariff revenue annually, and now they say with all these other tariffs they've got in place, it's 350 billion. And so instead of putting a lot of that to the deficit, they've decided to say we want to give out these checks because this is a code red and it's a huge issue, and they will put in articles of impeachment against Trump, but the House will, because it's about a 50-50 chance. There's a lot of conservatives now saying and dooming and oh, they're going to lose. I mean, it does. You look at the historical precedent. Yeah, I mean, the opposing party is going to be the favorite to win the midterm. So it looks like the Senate, just in terms of the elections that are happening in 2028, is going to be something the Republicans can hold on to. But the House is a big issue, and you see some of these redistricting problems now. Trump is trying to push a lot of these over the finish line. There's some issues in terms of, I believe, the state Supreme Courts. And so we'll see, even if they do get the redistricting, what are they going to have, like a net gain of 6 or 7 seats? It's still going to be a wide open House either way. I mean, every seat matters for sure, but you also have the Democrats responding with some redistricting of their own. So they've got these checks, and Bissent talking about possibly it being inflationary. Yeah, the deal is, like, with the inflation, inevitably, if you're giving people $2,000, even if the money is already in existence, it's already in circulation, it's not being printed. Like in 2021 and 2022, you had the worst situation imaginable where money gets created and then given to people, and then they spend it immediately. And so that's going to drive up things significantly. This situation is where the money it already exists. It's been brought in the form of revenue from tariffs. Instead of using it to pay down the debt or using it for something else, they will be using it to give it to people. So, it's a little bit of a different situation, but it still will be inflationary. To what degree, I don't know. They say they have a target of 2.0% for the core inflation. They're not going to be hitting that target. Let's be honest. I mean, whether it stays at 3.0 or 3.1, I think it's relatively stable, but they're cutting every meeting. They're cutting now by 0.25. They say, well, it has to be at 2.0 to cut. Evidently, it doesn't. So, I mean, I think they're going to cut again in the report, because they're apparently withholding the GDP for quarter three. They're going to be cutting again in the December 10th meeting, the Federal Reserve, by about 0.25 basis points. So yeah, we'll have to see if this ends up happening and what it does. I mean, it's probably going to be inflationary. The strategy is, let's give them the checks in the summer. So we give them the checks, they spend it, and then you really don't see the effects of the inflation until after the midterms. So that the strategy. Now give them it like right in early September. Maybe that's the plan if it has maybe a little bit of hold up in Congress, because I believe these have to go through Congress, and so there'll be a lot of pressure on Congress to push these through. People are going to be demanding $2,000 checks. I don't think. I mean, will it happen? We'll have to see. You know, they said they were going to give out massive, like $4,000 checks with Doge. They couldn't even save like 1/20th of what they wanted to save, and that was mainly because of just how corrupt the government is in general. Musk went in there and they said, "You're not going to touch any of this," and then he got really angry, and it was kind of a flop. I mean, they did clean some things up. Maybe I'm not being charitable enough to Doge, but that's just the way it is in DC. Unfortunately, it's like corruption on top of corruption on top of corruption, and it's like everyone is corrupt. Everyone's getting money from somewhere, and you can, and so and an outsider comes in, and then Musk ends up trying to start his own party. Realizes that would be a money pit. It's not worth it. And so here we are today, where I think Musk is kind of still a supporter of Trump. I mean, he's not going to go back to the Democrats. And the Republicans need Musk's war chest, and they need his money. And so, I think Musk is going to be a big asset for Republicans in 2026. I don't know. These midterms, they seem, I wouldn't doom on them just because it's too early for that. The House, it seems really tedious right now. I mean, to me, whether or not Trump's approval rating is good right now is irrelevant. It's important to understand when you're in the moment, you don't want to be overly emotional. Step back. What does it matter? I mean, Trump's still, in terms of where his approval was in his first term versus where it is now, it's still in a significantly better place. But yeah, will these checks actually help? I mean, this is the micro picture we're doing here with these checks. You know, we're not in the position to be giving out $2,000, especially with an annual deficit of 2.1 trillion or 2 trillion, whatever it is. And so, but they got to do it because what is Trump going to be impeached then? Trump should really practice some responsibility and just pay down the deficit and then get impeached. That would make total sense because it's like, if you give these checks out, more people are probably going to vote for you. But that's the issue in terms of this. Like, you get about 10 months of runway before it's immediately, oh, you got to clean everything up. You got to stop the raids on the immigration because the independent people don't like it. And you got to give out $2,000 checks to try and win over voters rather than, implement some type of long-term strategy to deal with the economic situation. So that's just kind of how it is, unfortunately. And then you also do have JD Vance talking about the house prices doubling, in some areas tripling, talking about young people feeling priced out of the American dream and home ownership, talking about the welfare scandal in Minnesota, the lack of assimilation when it comes to many of these immigrants. And then he says the administration is working hard to address the problems. And so when it comes to something like this, I mean, I really think it would be good if they created some type of initiative to build starter homes. And I have looked into the housing crisis and the problems, and it's a little bit more complicated than just saying, well, it's all these immigrants coming into the United States. That's the problem. Well, that's one of the problems. A lot of times with these immigrants, when they buy the homes, like the 2,500 square foot, normal, standard, suburban, middle-class home, they'll pack like 8 or 9 people to it. And a lot of times they're rented. They're not even bought. So they'll have like a monthly rent payment of like $2,300 split between 8 or 9 people. And you see that a lot. And so when it comes to something like this, yes, the immigration's got to be curbed. Everybody knows, we can go through this 100 times. The immigration's got to be cut off, right? We know that. We needed to cut the immigration off in 2010 or whenever, but obviously that's really not going to happen. They're not doing that. They're not even talking about legal immigration in the United States as like a mainstream topic. They are talking about it in Europe, not in the US though. So now they're settling on the illegal immigration and trying to get the illegals out and saying, well, illegals are buying homes. Well, that's really not going to cause these crazy prices. They need to build more homes. And that's basically the bottom. And then there's also the zoning problems. But I'm not a big fan of rezoning things because a lot of it gets blamed on single family homes, which I know is very important for a lot of people to own their own land and their own home. And I think rezoning, it's like third worldism. There was actually a story in Virginia where this, I don't know if it was a Muslim family or an immigrant family, they were having 3 different generations of their family move into a home. It was probably like 1,800, maybe 1,900 square feet, maybe a little bit more than 2,000. And they wanted to build an addition. And so they built this 3-story like office building. And this is in Virginia. It's probably like Northern Virginia. There's all these liberal white women. they're like, well, that's not allowed. When you look at the zoning coordinates and the height of it, there's a height restriction. This is zoned to be single family. But I mean, this is what happens, and that's the problem with like they say, well, the zoning has to change. Well, we don't want to say the zoning is the zoning. There's a reason it's zoned a certain way. I think they just need to build more in different areas, maybe, and you could build the townhomes or the duplexes or whatever. But they got to do some type of initiative. They should have. And the other thing is, there's not enough American laborers. There's not enough carpenters. You have to somehow be able to, whether it's paying them more, whether it's making it a more of an attractive career. I don't know what the exact answer is. That you have to do it when they're in college, or preferably even before college is a trades route. But it has to be more of an attractive situation, because the other thing is you've got a bunch of illegals building these homes. The homes are not built properly. On top of that, they leverage that and they say, well, you have a building problem. What happens when all the illegals get deported? Well, that's kind of our problem, isn't it? I mean, we're a country. Shouldn't we be able to function without needing illegal immigrant labor? I mean, that seems like something that we should figure out, is it not? So there needs to be more workers in general to build these homes. So, there's a lot of issues, but really Vance needs to talk about that. It seems like Vance just talks about, well, it's all the illegals. They come and they take all the homes. But it's not even the illegals. It's mainly the legal immigrants. The amount of legal immigrants the United States lets in every year is still an extremely high number. You go back to 65, Hart-Celler. I mean, we've let in legally 30, 40 million more than the next closest country. Of course, we're going to have a housing problem. And then you've got the 2008 housing crisis, and they stopped building homes. And they say we're 3 to 4 million homes short in terms of where we need to be. Well, then there needs to be some type of government initiative and an investment into building a lot of starter homes to try and drive down these prices. It really is a supply and demand issue. And also the land now costs more. And on top of that, and this is probably the biggest problem, if you look at the real wages versus inflation and versus the cost of everything, it hasn't been synchronized within the last 30 or 40 years. And so things keep getting more expensive, but the median middle class income is not matching how expensive everything is getting. And so that's another issue in terms of labor competition with immigrants. And also feminism, bringing women into the workforce. So there's more money that has to be spread around. The overall salaries for everyone is going to be suppressed. So there's a number of things at play here. It'd be good to see Vance maybe try and tackle this. He's kind of a younger person, so maybe this is their plan to say, you know what, we want to try and help younger people out. This is their biggest issue. In terms of like young people in general, you have to really wonder, like, what is the voter share of that? I mean, the economy is a huge thing, but I don't know, the voter share of young people in terms of them actually determining elections. But at this point, I would say, we'll see what Vance keeps talking about this. And it's more so he's hitting on the immigration issue. And he is talking about the assimilation problems. Well, Minnesota is just, I guess I should say Minneapolis in specific. There's areas that are just completely gone. It's just the cohort of immigrants. They all move to one area. There's no assimilation. And they demand that we assimilate to them. And then you get a situation, whether it's in Minneapolis, whether it's in Dearborn, Michigan. I'm sure many people saw that, where it's like a religious battle in the United States of America, and the city's just been completely taken over by Muslims. And they say, well, this is freedom of religion. Was there freedom of religion in your home country where you were born? Can a Christian open a church in your home country in the Middle East? And so you see the double standard, but we have to allow all of this here. And it's like, listen, there can be, you bring in these different cultures, but at a certain point, it becomes completely overwhelming. There's just really no reasonable way to manage that level of immigration and that level of competition flooding into your country for 5, 6, 7 decades at this point straight. And it's not stopping either. This is legal immigration. And by the way, the illegal numbers that I'm seeing, and they've said this for 2 or 3 months now, they say, well, it's around 400K physical interior removals where ICE goes around and they have to deport people. And then they say they've estimated it's about 1.6 million self-deportations. They're relying heavily on the self-deportation number. So they're saying, well, it's 2 million deportations in total. Whether or not you think that's a winning battle or not with the deportations, I mean, I think in general, people still, it's like a 60-40 issue. It seems like 60% of the country does want all the illegals removed. The issue is, in doing so, some people are saying, well, I don't want them removed like that. I don't want them deported using ICE physically. I don't want people questioned about whether or not they're legal or not. So in the way in which it's done, people don't like. They want to be massaged, or they don't want it to be shown, or I don't know what they want. But this is just the way you have to deport these people. So I don't know if they've actually deported. You know, they say they deport. Well, in terms of the self deportations, 2 million people in 10 months. That's amazing if that's true. Um, we'll have to see, because I am very skeptical of their numbers. I know they flubbed a lot of the recent jobs reports and some other things. I mean, we'll have to see. I mean, that's an estimate, I think, on self-deportations, because nobody really even knows how many illegals are in the country when you add the Biden era with what were previously in the country. There's only estimates, and the liberal estimates say it's around 10 to 11 million. And then you've got the administration and their estimates and what Trump and Vance say, and they say, well, there's 20 to 30 million. So, I mean, based on the data, the trackable data, they say, I've seen it's like 11 to 15 million illegals. I understand people are not going to believe that. You can believe whatever you want, I guess, based on wherever you get your information. It's fine by me. But I'm just saying, in terms of what I've seen, it's maybe like 11 to 20 million in total. But I mean, they say, well, 10 million were let in under Biden alone. Why doesn't the administration come out and give an actual estimate on how many illegals are in the country? I mean, they should have the ability to do that. And that could really, we could at least have a range in terms of how many of them are here. But I mean, obviously, that's a whole nother situation in terms of the legal versus illegal. I'm just talking about immigration in general when you look at the housing market and the competition. It's not even just, well, illegals are pouring into the country and buying all these homes and the mortgages. No, that would be legal immigrants, and that would be more so there's nobody building the home, so it's a building problem, and it becomes a supply issue. And then we get into the deeper stuff, or maybe even they say the number one issue is zoning, which I don't agree with, and I wouldn't rezone a lot of the single family homes, because it becomes just a cesspool of just crap if you rezone. I mean, maybe you're less stingent on the zoning in certain areas, but if you fully rezone, it's going to lower property values too. You're not going to be able to do that to people. Obviously there's a yin and a yang with everything, with any type of initiative. Whether you try and build new homes, whatever you do, rezoning. But you just try. I mean, the market has to be flooded with more houses. I mean, it's just the reality. We're about 3 million, 4 million houses short. So maybe Vance decides to say, well, this is what we're doing. It just seems like Vance is really, because they know the immigration topic. I think it's a win. I still believe it's a win, even with the polarization of the deportations and ICE removing people and the videos being shown and whatever. And a lot of liberals are going against it. I mean, obviously liberals are going to go against it. They're going to go against anything Trump does. It is what it is. But if you can just have the independents who like it, and you really flex this as a major win, I mean, it has to be flexed as a major win, because the number one thing was shutting the border down. And whether or not you believe that literally no illegal immigrants have crossed, which is what the administration says, the numbers have to be very low. They got, and this is just what it is, they got a record budget for ICE. Their immigration budget is a record high. So if they've got a record budget, and that hasn't even come into effect yet, by the way, in terms of the big, beautiful bill, Trump obviously has delivered on that. I mean, everybody has to admit that. Now, whether or not the deportations are happening at a rate that's acceptable, that comes down to law enforcement inefficiencies, I guess. You can't really scale the amount of money you spend in terms of the investment on every deportation. And what people think it should be in terms of these people, and whether or not you think, well, they need due process. Well, technically they're not citizens. So it's really not how it works. But I mean, even that, I mean, we're still spending a ton of money deporting all these people. They say, well, they don't get the process. It's like $20,000 to deport one of these people. Really? What else do they need? And this is just, again, the illegal immigrants. It's really legal, illegal. It's just immigration. It's a circle. And that's what it is. But it's like, when you have this amount of legal immigration since post 65, post the elimination of the quota system, you're going to price a lot of Americans out of their own markets. And now all the boomers hoard the homes, and the prices go up, and there's more people in the workforce. It pollutes it in terms of watering down salaries, median salaries. I mean, these are all issues. So, we'll have to see what ends up happening with all this stuff. It's just a mess. I mean, let's say, but this check that they're trying to propose, they're trying to just, people say, well, they're buying votes. Yeah, this is what happens, unfortunately, because they have to do this. Otherwise, Trump's maybe impeached. And if you have to deal with that, that's just a complete waste of time. And it's not even just him possibly being impeached or whatever. It's the fact that, well, if they control the House, they're going to block a bunch of stuff. It's going to be very hard for Trump to push any type of agenda in 2027 and 2028. And 2028 already is just going to be that election. So that's not even really going to be a ton of, well, maybe that's when Trump can do a bunch of stuff. Well, actually, maybe in the lame duck period, but 2028 is going to be another time where Trump has to try and appeal whether or not he endorses Vance or whoever. So that's basically it. It's enough for this video, guys. But make sure you like the video down below. Also follow me on X. Link to that's always in the description.